welcome to another episode of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. 40 Minutes in the Old Testament is a 1517 podcast network podcast, and you can go to 1517.org/podcast and check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. While you're over there, make sure you check out everything else that 1517 is doing. It's a lot of things. Sign up for some academies. Go to the events page and see if there's some tickets left. Like we record these things in advance, so I can't guarantee anything. But as of the time that we're recording this, there are some tickets left, particularly for the national event. There's a handful of those left, and man, that's something you should go get if you can, because obviously those will not be there. I know it's all the way in October, but you can't wait till August. That's not how this works at all. So you have to grab them, go get them. Just go to the events page, click on that, and while you're over there, of course, check out that donate link if you want to support what I'm doing, what Chad's doing, what 1517 is doing. This podcast, make it continue to be free, continue to go out to the world. Then we do that based on the financial giving of people like you. And if you are one of those people, thank you very much. If you are not and would like to become one, thank you very much for that. You can go do that at 1517.org. Chad, we are in Isaiah chapter 14. The Lord is issuing some taunts here. So even though Babylon and the Assyrians and all these different things, they're instruments, in the hand of God. God is using the evil desires of their heart to his purposes. But we've established this over and over again. What is something that God really hates? Well, I'll tell you what it is. Pride, haughtiness. And man, sounds like these Babylonians and such have a lot of that. And so he's going to use that to accomplish his ends, but then he's going to say, hey, a little big for your britches there. Let me tell you what's going to happen to you guys. You guys think that you're doing all this stuff. You think that you can just overthrow my people. Let me tell you, once I step in, it goes very badly for you.
Yeah, and we left off last time with the image of the king of Babylon being lifted up to the highest mountain, to the far reaches of Mount Zaphon, which is at the end of verse 13. And then God says, you're going to be brought down to Sheol, to the far reaches of the pit. So I guess we might say, you think you're going to lift yourself up to Mount Everest, you're going to go to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. It's just, yeah. No matter how high you think that you've lifted yourself up, well, there's going to be a corresponding descent that I'm going to make happen to you. So we're going to pick it up with verse 16. I'll read 16 through the next 2 or 3 verses. Those who see you will stare at you and ponder over you. So this is people seeing the king of Babylon, as we talked about last time, is not necessarily one king. It's we might say the throne of Babylon, maybe something like that. The office of the king of Babylon, which is the figurehead of this entire country. Anyway, those who see you will stare at you, ponder over you, and here's what they're going to say. Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world like a desert and overthrew its cities, who didn't let his prisoners go home? So in other words, this guy, you mean this guy who's been brought all the way down here? That's the guy? We're supposed to be afraid of him? This is the guy who conquered the world and did all these terrible things and made the earth shake because it's so scared of him. That's the guy. And so then it picks up with verse 18. All the kings of the nations lie in glory, each in his own tomb. It was a big deal back then. You made sure that you buried your leaders in this majestic kinds of tombs. That way their legacy could continue, you might say, architecturally in these great adorned tombs. So that's where they're at. Well, what about the king of Babylon? Verse 19 says, but you are cast out away from your grave like a loathed branch. I don't know why you'd loathe a branch, but I think what's going on here is the same word that's used here in Hebrew, netzer, is the word for branch. It's the same word that occurs in Isaiah 11:1. There shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his root shall bear fruit. So, loathe the branch here is picking up on the regal imagery that Isaiah has already used in reference to a leader. So you're going to be like this branch that's just hated, that's loathed, despised. And then he continues, he changes, the prophets are masters at mixing metaphors. So he's going to switch it up. Now he's going to say, that the king of Babylon is clothed with the slain, if you can picture that image. He's wearing dead bodies, more or less, those pierced by the sword, who go down to the stones of the pit, like a dead body trampled underfoot. Now, one more here. You will not be joined with them in burial, because you have destroyed your land. You have slain your people. May the offspring of evildoers never more be named. Prepare slaughter for his sons, because of the guilt of their fathers, lest they rise and possess the earth and fill the face of the world with cities. So things are not going to go well for the king of Babylon. He's not like, it's one thing to be humiliated, to be brought down to the lowest point. But following that is this utter shame and humiliation where even his body, he's not even going to have rest in death. His body's going to be unburied, put out in public. And we have, of course, these images which are metaphorical of him wearing dead bodies as his clothing. He's trampled underfoot. And I think this whole, the slaughter for his sons because of the guilt of their fathers, well, this is just the way things work. We see this happen all the time, especially in evil regimes where if you have the father who's a terrible king, well, guess who ends up also paying the penalty for all the bad he does? Well, his sons do. This generational kind of stuff that happens all the time.
Yeah. Well,
so yeah.
One of the things that God is doing here is that you have to understand that death is not the worst fate for leaders and warrior kings type people at this time. God is promising something that is worse than that, which is that your reputation is going to be that of a failure, of a loser, right? Mm-hmm. And this is far worse. It's far worse to say that these guys would boast, because you understand people died all the time. That life expectancy is not that long. You could die from anything, and the question is legacy, honor, what's going to be said about you. Right, this is all that mattered, and so God goes beyond just oh, I'm going to kill you, that. Okay, whatever. There's a lot of people that want to kill people, in this time. It's no, your legacy, what will be said of you by other people. You have a legacy of shame and failure, and this is the worst possible thing to have happen to you, right? Where people would say that guy, that guy's nothing. That you're going, none of your stuff will succeed. You will not be spoken of in song or in hushed and reverent tones. None of this is going to happen for you. That's a big burn at this time. It's the fate worse than death for these people.
Yeah, because part of this is their quest for immortality.
Mm-hmm. That's how you live forever.
That's how you live forever. You if you're a pharaoh in Egypt, then you have all your accomplishments chiseled into stone, quite literally.
And you want someone to go by your tomb, right? You want someone to go by your tomb and to tell their children and their children and their children about this is the great whatever, and this is what he did. If you take all that away, this is the worst thing that could happen to you.
Yeah, the pyramids. These are monuments to those who wanted to have immortality. So that you have your metaphorical mini pyramids all over the world, of course, and people. That's why they not only raised the monuments, and you had this elaborate tombs, but you had songs written about you. You had all this stuff that was supposed to be perpetuating the memory of what a great person you are. And I guess it's as strong today, but certainly in the ancient world, man, the idea of not being buried was one of the worst fates that could happen to you physically, anyway. To be not to be able to have your body laid to rest, and so that's what's going to happen here. So, and keep in mind too, as we talked about in the last episode, that this isn't just about the king of Babylon, but also this is about everything that Babylon represents. Part of which are the devil and all the powers of hell, which are kind of behind these leaders, especially Babylon. From Genesis to Revelation, Babylon is always the kind of the earthly face of the demonic power. So this isn't just saying this is going to happen to this guy or to this throne or even to this nation, but also wrapped up in this whole prophecy of eternal shame and defeat and death and all of that is the fate of the devil himself. So you got kind of the heavenly and the earthly going on at the same time with this.
Yeah, and this is sort of like the eternal judgment, and by that what I mean is that the final state, right? So it's not to be changed. Like this is the one that this is what you're left with, and it will not be reversed. It will not be undone. So you have like language like this in some of this happens in Daniel and some other places as well, where you have this sort of this idea of a shame that's eternal, and and what it means is that you might struggle to think like, what does that mean? Like, so you just like if it's speaking of you being dead, but you have this eternal shame. Well, you could use an example like Hitler. Like,
so that's like what I was about to say. His name was almost coming out of my lips when you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Hitler's dead, right? But like his shame is not dead.
No.
Like this goes on. Like he just goes on forever. Like he is talked about as, you know, if you're trying to
the worst.
Yeah, you're trying to compare something to the worst person that you can think of. Then like Hitler is the name that comes up, and like so, this is the fate of the devil, of the demonic forces, and the fate of the Babylonian kings and stuff as well. And this is the worst possible of all fates, is to have this sort of eternal shame verdict placed upon you.
Yeah. All right, so let's pick it up with 22. We've only got a couple verses. This will wrap up the Babylonian oracle anyway, then we'll get to Assyria next. I will rise up against them, declares the Lord of hosts, and will cut off from Babylon name and remnant, descendants and posterity, declares the Lord. And I will make it a possession of the hedgehog, or the porcupine, or the owl.
I like
it's like one of these. Yeah,
I like the hedgehog. I had hedgehogs when I was a kid. I raised hedgehogs.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're cute
very,
pets.
They're very cute, but you can't like really hold them. Like they're very spiky.
That would be a problem.
I mean, I used to hold them all the time, but like when they get freaked out, they roll up in a ball, and that ball is like very difficult to hold because it's
holding a pincushion. Yeah,
very very pokey.
So, as with a lot of, you have this with sometimes with vegetation, but you also certainly have it with animal names in Hebrew. Yeah, we're not completely sure. So
and I do like the idea that God. Like,
we'll call it a hedgehog.
Think about God saying this. First of all, if God starts something and says like, "I will rise up against them," this is not good. It's not good when God rises up against you. This always ends up terrible. But if you sort of condense this down, it says like, I'm going to rise up against you and give your land to hedgehogs. There's something amazing about that.
Yeah, it's quite the slap down.
Like I'm going to give, hey, all your land's going to be dominated by that. I'm going to give it to somebody. You know who's that somebody's going to be? Hedgehogs.
Hedgehogs, that's right. It's going to make it a possession. The hedgehogs, they're going to claim this land as their own, and pools of water. And I will... God's going to take a broom, too. He's going to sweep it with a broom of destruction, declares the Lord of hosts. So we got 3 declares the Lord or declares the Lord of hosts. I think sometimes these are repeated to make sure you got this. You know, God is saying this, and then he's saying it again, and then he's saying it again, just to make sure you realize he's not kidding around. This is what's going to happen to Babylon. So we end this oracle against his taunt against the king of Babylon with God taking up a broom and basically just sweeping them away.
I would assume the Assyrians will be fine, though, right?
Oh yeah, the Assyrians, of course, are going to be good. Nothing bad's going to happen to the Assyrians. Yeah, so that's what's coming up next. We have another oracle here against the Assyrians, even though it's not called explicitly an oracle. It kind of fits with this whole theme of the oracles against the nations. The first of which, of course, was Babylon, which we just finished. Now, it seems out of order chronologically because, as we mentioned last time, who's the greatest threat to Israel in Isaiah's day? It's not the Babylonians. I mean, it was the Assyrians. They were the ones breathing down the neck of everybody. They were the big dog back then, and they were only going to be replaced in time by the Babylonians. But I think an argument can be made, and some commentators do make this argument, that it's positioned in this way, with Babylon first and then Assyria next, in order to, as it were, give the Israelites kind of a down payment, or maybe that's not the best way to explain it, to give the Israelites a confirmation in the near future of what God is going to do down the road. So what's going to happen soon? Well, the Assyrians are going to be destroyed. They're going to be stopped. And God is saying, by putting this here, oh, if you have any doubts about what I just said about Babylon, well, look at what I'm about to do to Assyria. And then you'll know what's going to happen down the road to Babylon.
Well, and you can also argue that, like, God knows which of these people are going to be worse for his people.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, so sure, if you're a Jew living at that time, and you said, who's going to be the people that are most likely to cart you off into captivity and be the biggest pain in your side? You'd be like, the Syrians. But God's like, no.
Mm-mm. Yeah, they were to the northern kingdom, of course.
Yeah.
Those 10 tribes in 722. But we don't really talk about the Assyrian exile as much as we talk about the Babylonian exile.
Well,
the Bible makes a much bigger deal about that. Yeah. And they came back from the Babylonian exile, of course. They did not come back after the Assyrian exile. Who knows where all of those folks ended up? But
and that goes that works with God talking about a remnant, and this kind of, like, this all happens with Babylon. Like, this isn't about like you said, like the Assyrian stuff. Like, you're just kind of all over. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're not like they're spreading them out, and they're moving other people in to replace them into the northern kingdom.
Because the Bible does this, like, zoom in thing. It's like there's lots of stuff going on, but it, like, takes things and then, like, zooms in on them. And, like, the Babylonian exile is one of those things where it zooms in on that. Like, you get you know way more about it. It's almost like God. It's not almost like this. It is this that. God is telling a story, and they're like, this is a main part of it, right? This is a much more crucial part of the story than this other one, because of the fact that they come out of it.
Yeah, and you've got you got people like Daniel in Babylon, Ezekiel in Babylon. You have the amount of years prophesied as to how long the Babylonian exile is going to last. And I mean, even in the New Testament, you have the opening of Matthew, where he talks about the deportation to Babylon. So it was a much bigger deal than the Assyrian threat ever was. Yeah,
and so it could be that God is ordering these sort of in order of importance in His mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the Assyrians never did achieve kind of the iconic status as that the Babylonians did. I mean, they're the bad guys, of course. But they don't, even though they, like, in reality, may have been just as evil or more evil than the Babylonians, that's not their status in the biblical picture.
Right.
They're used as a whip and a scourge by God. And we do know, I mean, from plenty of extra biblical material as well as biblical material, they did horrendous things to people, for sure. But they just didn't achieve that same iconic status as the Babylonians did. So, and for that reason, they're put second. And also, it's much shorter. It's only 1, 2, 3, 4 verses, this oracle against Assyria. So, let me read those now. This is 24 through 27. The Lord of hosts has sworn, as I have planned, so shall it be. And as I have purposed, so shall it stand, that I will break the Assyrian in my land, and on my mountains trample him underfoot. And his yoke shall depart from them, and his burden from their shoulder. This is the purpose that is purposed concerning the whole earth, and this is the hand that is stretched out over all the nations. For the Lord of hosts has purposed, and who will annul it? His hand is stretched out, who will turn it back? So, clear, short, not sweet, but right to the point. Here's what's going to happen. I do think it's interesting. I don't know what you think about this, Dan. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but when you see verse 26, so he's talking about the Assyrians in 24 and 25, and in a focused sort of way. This is what I'm going to do to them. I'm going to break their yoke, going to break their burden. No, these are well-known stereotypical images from the Bible about oppression. Put a yoke on someone and burden on someone and all of that. And then in verse 26, he fans out. So he says, this is the purpose I purpose concerning the whole earth. This is the hand that is stretched out over all the nations. It seems like that's a pretty common thing that happens, not just in the prophets, but I'm thinking too of the synoptics. We have the destruction of Jerusalem that's talked about, but at the same time, it seems like, okay, are you talking about Jerusalem or destruction, or are you talking about your second coming? It's almost like these two are spoken of in the same breath. Destruction of this city at this particular time, this is going to happen. At the same time, we're talking about a bigger destruction that's going to happen at the end. It's like both of these are happening, not happening at the same time, but they're both talked about in such a way that you can't talk about one without talking about the other. And I get a feel like that's what's happening here with Assyria, that this destruction of Assyria, yes, is a very historical, specific kind of prophecy, but it also stands for something bigger that's coming.
The second sort of Jesus sandal hits the sand, and in Jerusalem, all of the sort of end of the age kind of stuff, whether it's the destruction of the temple, the second coming, the last days, all this is spoken of as the same thing. And I think that in the prophets, then it's sort of prophesied as the same thing too. Like it's this idea that when in the incarnation, like the end has come. All of the purposes of God have like culminated into this thing, and like it is all ending now. Now that's been going on for a long time, but I think in the mind of the prophets, and I think the way that Jesus himself talks about it and the apostles talk about it, like you're in the very last days, the second you have the incarnation happen. Like this is how it works. And so, like destruction of the temple. That's why we talked about this in an episode or two ago. That this is why that they can talk about the first advent and the second advent as the same promise. Mm-hmm. So we would say 2 events, 1 promise. This is how it's talked about. Same thing, right? Where it's like when it's concerning Jesus, and then his role and as the one who is going to come again to usher in the end of all things, it's all spoken of as like one thing because it's one person.
Yeah. This almost, doesn't this same approach even inform our reading of Revelation too? I mean, isn't the same thing, kind of thing happening there where, a lot of what John is talking about is obviously directed at Rome. I mean, it's unmissable. I mean, I think even those who are much more kind of futuristic in their interpretation of Revelation would have to admit there's a lot of Rome focus there. Yeah. So even there, I think John is very much a prophet. Well, he even calls it, a prophecy. He's talking about the destruction of Rome, but he's also talking about more than that. He's talking about Roman destruction, and he's also talking about the second coming into the world, all this kind of stuff together. And I don't think it's one of the things where you can like draw nice and neat lines and say, okay, this is where he stops talking about that. This is where he starts talking about this. It's like it's all part of this one big prophetic conversation. And I think the reason, Jesus does that when he talks about the temple and Jerusalem's destruction, and the reason that John does it in Revelation is because, they're just doing what the prophets always did. They're melding these events together.
Well, I always talk about, I think this is helpful. It's helpful for me. Other people have told me it's helpful. It might not be helpful to everyone, but I think you can sort of apply this to the prophets sometimes too, but particularly in Revelation, I apply this, but I think it kind of works here as well, that Revelation is like a song. And so songs have choruses that appear over and over again in the song. So it's verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, interlude, chorus, whatever it is, right? And And so when you try to read some of these things just like linearly, like you're just saying like is this chronological? Like does it just go in a straight line? That's the wrong way to think about it. So in Revelation, the chorus appears over and over again, which I would say is like, yes, like the second coming, like the end of all things. Like this like drops in over and over again. And like so John will give you a verse, and then the chorus comes, but then there's another verse, and then the chorus comes, and there's this bridge, and then the chorus comes. And that's how it's most helpful to read it, I think, to realize that that's what he's doing. I think the prophets do that too. Now, I would also say that song that John is playing in Revelation that is written in the key of the Old Testament. And so if you don't really know the Old Testament, I think that Revelation is very difficult for you to understand, because that is the notes that he's singing it in, you know. Now I don't know if that's completely helpful, but like that's how I have looked at Revelation, and it's helpful to me.
I think it is. I mean, it's helpful for me to think about that. I mean, it's not the kind of the metaphor that I've used before. I've thought about it, of course, in those kind of. I realize it's cyclical. It's not linear when you read Revelation, but no, the analogy of the song and the chorus I think it is helpful, and I do think that's where. And I know we're going astray here from Isaiah, but it's all part of that same topic. I do think that's where most people go wrong in Revelation, when they read it as if, okay, here's point A, Revelation 1, and we're just going to track this linear historical unfolding as we work our way to chapter 22. And that's not the way that Revelation works, for sure, because Revelation's patterned after the same way the prophets work.
Mm. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like it's you think that like the Revelation chapter 1 is the beginning, and it's working its way towards 22, which is the end. And you're like, well, no, the end appears like a bunch of times.
Yeah,
like it's like
it keeps dropping in. The chorus does. Yeah,
it appears all over the place. And that's the same. And that's to bring it to why you guys talking about this. That is how the prophets work, though, like as well. Like we're seeing this in Isaiah, and we're going to keep seeing it. Like it's going to drop in. Like he's going to move on to this other verse, and you're talking about some other other promises, and you're going to get some gospel-y stuff, and then he's going to drop in this chorus of Isaiah. Of course, is sort of the more immediate thing that's happening, right? But that's how most of the prophets work. Where it's like, wait a minute, did we move on from what we were talking about? It's like, we'll get back to that, but like we're gonna sing this song right here. We're gonna sing this part first. Again.
Yeah. A lot of the chorus in Isaiah is what we heard in chapter 2, where you have the mountain of the house of the Lord established as the chief of the mountains, or you have this Davidic ruler that's coming in, the Messiah, but a couple of different themes pop up over and over. In fact, we're going to see one of these in, I think, maybe the next chapter, where the Moabites seek refuge under under King David or one of his successors. Well, it's dropping in there. The chorus is resounding once more.
Yeah, let's sing about this remnant again.
Yes. All right, so that's Assyria. We're gonna now change directions. Instead of looking east toward the Assyrians, we're going to look west toward the Philistines. This is pretty short too. This is 28 through 32. This is going to take us through the end of chapter 14. And begins by, Isaiah doesn't always do this, but here he does. He says, in the year that King Ahaz died, came this oracle. So he's going to pinpoint exactly when this happened. And I think the reason he does this, I suspect what's going on here is that, okay, so Ahaz, not a good king, one who leaned on political salvation. He was turning to the Assyrians for help. He thought they were his saviors. So you have Ahaz, who's very much concerned with turning to the Assyrians for help instead of to the Lord. Okay, he dies. Who's going to take his place? Hezekiah, whom we know is a good king. But I think probably what happened was, and this is not just my construction, I'm drawing this from some scholars that I've read on this, so Ahaz dies, Hezekiah, his son's taken over, and the Philistines show up, and they're basically going to travel kind of as an envoy to Jerusalem to, quote, air quotes here, to comfort Hezekiah over the death of his father, and probably try and draw the new king into to being their ally against the Assyrians. Because we know this from Assyrian records, that the Philistines were always trying to rebel against the Assyrians, or they were joining forces with the Egyptians against the Assyrians. So they very much don't want to be under the thumb of the Assyrians. So they're probably jockeying for position with the people of Jerusalem, trying to get Hezekiah to be on their team against the Assyrians. Anyway, that's just kind of setting the stage for what's
This is
coming.
some funny, like unlikely allies, right? Like, so.
Oh yeah.
if you're like, have a sort of surface level of the Old Testament, you'd be like, who are the bad guys in the Old Testament? You're like, oh, the Philistines for sure,
Those
right?
uncircumcised Philistines.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
The truth is, like, David was smacking the Philistines around a lot, and generations later, here they come, being like, you know what, we might need to come together to fight off this bigger, badder foe.
Yeah. So I'm going to read these next few verses, 29 through 32. Rejoice not, O Philistia, all of you, that the rod that struck you is broken. For from the serpent's root will come forth an adder, and its fruit will be a flying, fiery serpent. Ooh, that's like a biblical equivalent of a Sharknado there. A flying, fiery serpent. Does not sound good. The firstborn of the poor will graze, and the needy lie down in safety. But I will kill your root with famine, and your remnant it will slay. Wail, O gate. Cry out, O city. Melt in fear, O Philistia, all of you. For smoke comes out of the north, and there is no straggler in his ranks. What will, and then there's a little gap here, and I think this is Isaiah saying, what are we going to tell these envoys that come from Philistia? So he says, what will one answer the messengers of the nation? The Lord, this is the answer, the Lord has founded Zion, and in her the afflicted of his people find refuge. So there's some challenges here, and there's plenty of room for disagreement here as far as exactly all this entails. But what seems to be the main, the gist of the oracle is, okay, Philistia, you may have a temporary reprieve here. You know, the rod that struck you is broken, probably talking about one of the Assyrian rulers. Okay, he's, for whatever reason, he's broken, he's pulled back, something like that. And Isaiah is like, oh, you have not seen the worst yet, because after this serpent is gone, there's going to come an adder. And not just that, it's going to be like a flying, fiery serpent, which sounds an awful lot like a dragon to me.
Yeah.
When I think of a flying serpent that has fire, yeah, you thought that snake was a problem, and now it's gone, and you're, rejoicing. Wait till the dragon comes flying over the hill. Then you'll figure out things are not great for you. And then he goes on from there to basically talk about the complete destruction of Philistia. So the poor are still left, the needy are still there, but even those are going to be rooted out, remnants going to be slain, and then you have the image of the gates of the city, this personification of the city, or the gates that we often have in the Bible. So the gates wailing, the cities crying out, and then all of Philistia is just melting in fear, because you see this smoke, or it's kind of the image of, like, if you see this cloud of dust, huge cloud of dust coming on the horizon, there's a big army on the way. So that's the smoke out of the north. Could be literal smoke from their campfires too, but either that, dust or smoke, they're coming, because they're working their way around the Fertile Crescent, and they're working their way down, always from the north. From the north is where always the threat comes when the Assyrians or Babylonians come. So the Assyrians are coming from the north. You see their smoke, you see their dust. No stragglers in their ranks. They're ready for the fight. And so then he ends by saying, these envoys from Philistia, what should we tell them? Well, we're going to tell them that Zion is where God has established his throne. He's founded Zion, and in her the afflicted of his people find refuge.
Yeah, the whole idea here is you're going to tell them, like, we're not going to find refuge in some alliance with you. We're going to find refuge the place that we are always supposed to find refuge, which, of course, is in the Lord.
Yeah, I mean, that's thankfully that's what Hezekiah did. I mean, he changed course. He didn't go the same route toward a political salvation that Ahaz, his father, did. Now, he did suffer the attack of the Assyrians as a result of that, but the Lord also delivered him and Jerusalem from that threat. Okay, we got about 5 minutes left, so let's at least begin to look at chapter 15. This is long. In fact, to me, it's kind of surprisingly long because this is about Moab. I mean, of course, Moab is a big part of the Old Testament, but it wasn't. It's not as big as Assyria, or even the Philistines as far as that goes. But you've got chapter 15, you got chapter 16. You got really 2 chapters here, this long oracle against Moab. There's, for those who are interested in these kinds of things, by the way, if you compare this oracle in Isaiah with Jeremiah 48 sometime, just kind of put those 2 side by side, you'll see a lot of parallels here I think I counted up 13 of the place names in Isaiah are also then repeated. The place names in Moab are repeated in Jeremiah 48 of these cities and other parts of Moab. So good parallel there between what Isaiah is saying and then what much later on, Jeremiah would say in his own time and context. So the way this starts out is you got a bunch of names in this chapter. This would be one of those chapters in the Bible that no one wants to read on Sunday morning if they've been assigned the readings.
I don't think this one appears in the lectionary.
I don't think it does. No, we've got Ar, Kir, Dibon, Nebo, Medeba, Heshbon, Eliela, Jahaz. I mean, Zoar. Here's a mouthful. Eglath, Shalishia. So a lot of names coming up. Don't worry about all these if you're reading along. I'll try and explain a few of these, but basically these first few that we're going to talk about here in these opening 2 verses or so are in the north. So keep in mind, if you can picture on a map, or if you're looking on the map, Moab is going to be basically directly east of the Dead Sea. So that's the area that was assigned to Moab. And then Edom is below that. So this is in the Transjordan area on the other side of the Dead Sea. And basically what Isaiah is going to do is in this oracle, he's going to predict the just annihilation of Moab, so that you got people fleeing, especially south. They're going to go south toward Edom in order to escape the threat that is basically just mowing down city after city after city. I mean, it's kind of the image of just complete destruction. All these cities, all these vineyards, all these places are going to be wiped out. So I'll read a couple of verses. Because Ar of Moab is laid waste in a night, Moab is undone. Because Kir of Moab is laid waste in a night, Moab is undone. He has gone up to the temple and to Dibon, to the high places, to weep over Nebo and over Medeba. Moab wails. On every head is baldness, every beard is shorn. In the streets they wear sackcloth, on the housetops and in the squares. Everyone wails and melts in tears. Heshbon and Eliela cry out. Their voice is heard as far as Jahaz. Therefore the armed men of Moab cry aloud. His soul trembles. That's a bunch of heaped up images that you could summarize by saying things are really, really bad.
For everybody.
For everybody. In fact, it's quite I was thinking about this morning. It's quite the startling image when you have the armed men of Moab who are crying aloud. That's not the image we usually have of soldiers. They're the ones who are holding it together somehow. They're fighting. But even these guys, they're crying out because the destruction is so widespread. And then you have the images of associated with mourning or with grief, baldness, shaving of the head. There's a lot of wearing of sackcloth. You have a lot of different ways in that culture where people express grief, whether they tore their clothes, they cut themselves, they would throw dirt or ashes on their head, they shave their head, shave their beard, wailing, weeping. All of this was, of course, an outward sign of the inward torment, inward grief. So that's going down. It's all going down, of course, because of the Assyrians. So, stop there because of time. But that kind of gives you a taste for what's coming up for Moab, just like we've heard happen to Assyria, Babylon, and Philistia too.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, man. The souls are trembling. We'll have to see what else God has to say about that.
Little hope when we get to chapter 16, so we'll have a little light in the darkness coming up next time.
We'll check that out next episode. I'll see you then, Chad.
All right, see you then.